One of the key policies of the federal government is the revamping of the agriculture sector towards ensuring food security. The sector grew, especially in the first quarter of 2018, by 3.0%. However, it has slowed by 1.5% in the second quarter. My guest talks about the approach government is adopting to encourage growth in the agriculture sector. There. Welcome to Dateline Abuja. I'm Gloria Umezuki. The federal government is driving initiatives to make the agriculture sector the mainstay of the economy. Several initiatives have been launched in this direction. We'll be looking at how they have improved the sector. But first, what are the stories that made the headlines within the week in the nation's capital?
President Muhammadu Buhari Monday inaugurated the Presidential Committee for Impact and Readiness Assessment of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area to address risk associated with signing the agreement. He charged the committee to address the issues raised by the Nationwide Sensitization Committee set up to advise government on Nigeria's membership of the trade agreement.
The key issues raised by stakeholders were A. Abuse of rules of origin, B. Smuggling arising from difficulties in border controls, C. Unqualified impacts of legacy preferential trade agreements, D. Low capacity and capabilities of local business to conduct international trade, E. Cost of finance, F. Insufficient energy, and G. Transport, logistics, infrastructure, to mention a few.
Yes.
Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo says years of impunity and a slow judicial process is one of the biggest obstacles to addressing corruption. In a question and answer session at the 24th Nigeria Economic Summit, Professor Osinbajo described the impact of corruption in the country as unimaginable, noting that he receives several calls from the Nigerian elite urging him not to dismiss a corrupt official.
Confronting it is crucial because you really can't avoid it.
What happens when you try to dismiss someone who's corrupt? Like, who is it that calls you? Who is it that puts pressure on you not to do that?
Practically every segment, because, people who have access to you, they could be political leaders, they could be religious leaders, business leaders, whoever has access, So we have a system where people just feel that, well, we can, why don't you just give this guy a break? It's not, and I don't think that people necessarily feel that there's anything wrong with that, which again is part of the problem.
Police clashed with protesting workers of the National Health Insurance Scheme on Monday morning as the unions barricaded the entrance of the head office of the institution to prevent the embattled executive secretary, Professor Usman Yusuf, from entering the premises. He had on Friday defied a suspension handed to him by the Governing Council of the nation's health insurance scheme as he resumed his normal duties. However, the police forced him through a barricade formed by the workers who were chanting solidarity songs as they vowed to enforce the suspension. The National Assembly has passed the electoral bill for the fourth time. President Muhammadu Buhari had withdrawn assent to the bill 3 times, citing irregularities and drafting issues. However, the Committee of the Senate and House of Representatives addressed the issues raised by the President.
I want to specifically and categorically state very clearly that all the issues raised by the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria while declining his assent to this bill have been captured and addressed.
Abuja hosted the 12th Biennial Conference and Exhibition of African Broadcasters, Africa's 2018, this week. Speaking at the opening, the Director General of the National Broadcasting Commission, Mr. Ishaq Kawu, said that it is important that a strategic roadmap for the digital switchover in the African continent be developed to ensure everyone enjoys the digital experience.
The gathering has remained a major event on the international calendar, is owed to the commitment of all our partners who ensure that we can gather here every 2 years to enjoy the intellectually engaging interrogations, as well as the exhibition of the cutting-edge technology that make our industry so dynamic.
The federal government has taken the first step towards preparing the 2019 budget, which it estimates at 8.73 trillion naira. At this week's Federal Executive Council meeting, the Council approved the Medium Expenditure Framework and Fiscal Strategy Paper for 2019 to 2021.
Oil price benchmark of $60 US, oil production of 2.3 million barrels per day, exchange rate of 305 naira per US dollar, and the growth rate, GDP growth rate of 3.01%.
7 years after Boko Haram insurgents bombed the United Nations House in Abuja, forcing the world body to abandon the place, activities have gradually resumed at the building. At an event to mark the 2018 UN Day, the resident coordinator announced the gradual return to the building, explaining that it represents the cooperation between the UN and the federal government.
This year's UN Day also marks the UN family's partial move back to the UN House. I received a few hours ago the key back to our new home. To the UN in Nigeria, the UN House is a symbol of the resilience of our extraordinary cooperation and partnership with the government and people of Nigeria.
President Muhammadu Buhari has ordered the immediate clampdown on all illegal security outfits in the country. The National Security Advisor Babagana Monguno revealed this while addressing a news conference in reaction to recent crises in Kaduna, Adamawa, Plateau and Benue states. He added that all unlicensed and illicit acquisition of controlled items, including drones and broadcast equipment, are to be reported to the appropriate security agencies.
The President, who is the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, has directed that he does not want to see any illegal outfit, pseudo or paramilitary, emerging. Any outfit that is running parallel to our security agencies will be dismantled with immediate effect. This is very, very important. Also, the illicit acquisition of controlled items is something the Office of the National Security Advisor is also going to take charge of. It is something that we must stop, whereby individuals and organizations begin to acquire controlled items such as unmanned aerial vehicles, remotely piloted aircraft, drones, explosives, broadcast equipment, masts, and so on and so forth, will only end up in further confusing established organizations that have the responsibility to take custody of these items. If you are not licensed to carry out these functions, then I would want to advise that you surrender all these equipment to the relevant security agencies.
We must become a people who care for our own.
Triggered by the recent death of a minor in Benue State who allegedly died of complications from multiple sexual abuse, a coalition of rights activists are calling on government to put in place stiffer penalty for rapists and child molesters in Nigeria. The protesters marched to the office of the Minister of Justice in Abuja, asking that justice be done for all victims of rape and child abuse.
We must demand accountability of our government and justice for Ochaya and every child that has become a victim of sexual violence in Nigeria.